The Tsimshian are indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest coast. Today, they are the largest First Nation people in British Columbia. They have over 10,000 members throughout Canada and Alaska. Their cultural area follows the northwest coast of North America and inland along the Skeena and Nass rivers. The geography of this area ranges from coastlines to densely forested mountain regions. Due to being so close to the Pacific coast, they experience a very humid climate with wet, cold winters and hot, dry summers. The average temperature of the winter months is about 24.3 degrees and 61.5 degrees in the summer months. On average, this area receives about 40.3 inches of rainfall and 100.5 inches of snow. The wettest months of the year are October through February. This large amount of moisture allows for dense forests and lush vegetation. Today, their communities are found along the lower regions of the Skeena River and near Terrence and Prince Rupert in British Columbia, as well as in Alaska's Inuit Islands. Due to the abundance of food, the Tsimshian never had to develop a system of agriculture, and instead lived off the land as hunter-gatherers. Living by so many bodies of water, their diets mainly consisted of fish and other seafoods. They were very skilled fishermen and spent a lot of time fishing along the coasts. The Pacific salmon was a staple in the Tsimshian diet. Because of the importance salmon had to their survival, it became very culturally significant. But it wasn't just salmon that they hunted. Sea turtles, otters, and sea lions were hunted as well. While it was a man's job to hunt, the women gathered the ocean's other resources, like seaweed, clams, oysters, mussels, and crabs. Those that lived further inland along the Skeena River also hunted for things like deer, elk, bear, and goose. Berries like salmon berries and blueberries were very abundant and also gathered as food. Women would cook by grilling food over the fire or by heating rocks in the fire and then putting those rocks into cedarwood baskets filled with water to boil the food. Fish were commonly eaten fresh, however, much of it was smoked or dried and saved for the winter months. Berries would be crushed and spread along salmonberry leaves and hung up to dry. Women would also use eulachon, a type of fish, to produce oil. They would do this by boiling the fish and skimming the oil off the top of the water. The oil was then used for preserving food as a sauce or for trading with other tribes. During their annual migration upriver to spawn, salmon were caught using traps, spears, lines, and nets. A wooden trap was placed in the river, and a wooden fence was attached to the other side of the trap, forcing the fish to enter the trap. Canoes were used for hunting sea mammals like seals and otters, and on land, bows and arrows were used to hunt bears, deers, foxes, and much more. The fur of these animals were highly valuable. The Tsimshian have a maternal line of descent, meaning that children would inherit their lineage or clan affiliation from their mothers. There were 4 clans: Eagle, Killer Whale, Raven, and Wolf. Each clan had its own territories, which include salmon streams and hunting grounds. They each had their own songs, dances, myths, and family crests. The clan that had the most wealth was the most powerful, and each person had to marry outside of their own clan. There were 3 different social classes within Tsimshian society: nobility, commoner, and slaves. Nobility were the chief and the immediate family of the chief. Most people were commoners or laborers, and slaves were owned by the chief and were often prisoners of war. In their culture, spirits are connected to all living things. The only link between the spirit world and the natural world was the shaman. Shamans could be a man or a woman and often specified in one area. They could heal the sick, predict the weather and harvest, attract fish and game, or influence the outcome of a war. When someone became sick, it was believed to be by intervention by the spirit world or the loss of a person's soul. It was a shaman's job to help cure people's illness by strengthening them spiritually and purifying them. Spiritual cleanliness could be achieved through fasting and sexual abstinence. Foods like grease, yew wood, and devil's club were used by shamans as medicine. They also used tools like rattles, drums, charms, and staffs to connect to the spirit world. Charity was also important in their religion. It was believed that through charity and spiritual cleanliness was the only way to achieve the afterlife. The potlatch was an important ceremony to the Tsimshian. The potlatch was a feast that included singing and dancing where people would give gifts. The ceremony was held for marriages, births, deaths, and the finishing of a new house. Potlatches were a way in which families could show off their wealth to others. Each family or each person invited to a potlatch received gifts related to their social rank. The more gifts a family gave away, the more prestigious they were. A cleansing or dignity potlatch was to right the wrongs of an individual or to restore the dignity of a person after an embarrassing moment. Most Tsimshian art depicts myths and spiritual beings. Humans and animals like birds and fish were also portrayed. Crests were represented through carvings and paintings on interior posts, totem poles, house fronts, beams, rafters, and ceremonial entrances. These paintings were made in the traditional blue, red, yellow, or black and white. Wood carving and totem poles were passed down from generation to generation. Most totem poles had both animal and human forms carved into them, usually representing the family crest. They were made out of cedar and could be up to 15 meters tall. Women were responsible for all the weaving. They used softened cedar bark strips and cattails and colored grasses to make blankets, clothing, hats, and chilcote blankets.